Hello, everyone, and welcome to the semester finale of Game Center Live for the spring 2022 semester. It's Tuesday, May 3rd, and we're happy to see you all. We have got a wonderful show planned for today. First up, we have some very special guests. Mary Georgescu and Rachel Lee, two members of the Eat Melon team from the NYU Game Center Incubator 2022 cohort, are here to talk about their game Nothing to See Here, which is launching next Tuesday, May 10th. They'll be chatting with Department Chair Naomi Clark about their experience in the incubator and the challenges they overcame in pitching an adult party game to a major publishing house. Afterward, we'll be closing out with a crowd favorite. It's time for one more installment of the Discourse for this semester. Once again with Naomi Clark, and this time featuring Jack Schlesinger of Noodlecake, who recently launched their game Knotwords. All this and more coming up, but first we have some announcements. Playtest Thursday. It's the final Playtest Thursday of the semester. Join us down on the second floor one last time this spring to get that last bit of feedback you really need to take your final projects to the next level. That's this Thursday at 5:30, as always. Press Play. Stop by the final Press Play of the semester. This week's game selection is Dice Miner, a board game co-designed by Josh DeBonis and playtested here at the Game Center. All current NYU students and faculty are welcome. NYU Game Center Parkade, Wednesday, May 4th, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. outside on Willoughby and J Street. Tomorrow, this is tomorrow, Wednesday, May 4th, Willoughby and adjoining streets will be closed off for an NYU takeover. Come check out the inaugural NYU Game Center Parkade, a board game lounge and arcade that takes place in car parking spots. We'll be showcasing alongside performances from the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music and interactive projects from ITP and IMA. Plus, this outdoor event will be fully open to the public. No RSVP necessary. NYU Game Center Showcase 2022. We have a huge event coming up, our end-of-year showcase, in two parts. First, we will have a Twitch show right here on this channel, Monday, May 16th from 5 to 7 p.m., and our in-person showcase Friday, May 20th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Celebrate the work of the NYU Game Center students from the past year at our enormous annual end-of-year showcases. This year we'll be featuring a slice of thesis and capstone work on a 2-hour live stream happening right here on this Twitch channel. And then later in the week, we're thrilled to once again invite you back into our building at 370 J Street for our in-person showcase where you can play over 60 games made across a range of classes. More on our showcases later in the show. And some news: apply now for the NYU Game Center Incubator 2022. The NYU Game Center Incubator is a part-time, year-long program that helps transform small, independent game projects into polished, launched games. With the help of our faculty, as well as a dedicated group of industry advisors, the program provides time, space, guidance, and resources to help set teams up for success. Applications are due May 13th at 5 p.m. All right, and that's it for announcements, which means it's time to welcome to the stream Mary Georgescu and Rachel Lee, speaking with Naomi Clark about Nothing to See Here. Take it away.
All right, hey everybody, you get a double dose of me today for the whole hour. But fortunately, I have here to temper my personality Mary Georgescu and Rachel Lee, both alumni of the Game Center and also now alumni of the Incubator program. With their game, Nothing to See Here. Should we hold it up for the camera? Yeah, check this out. Yeah, let's do a tight zoom. I'm only kidding. Were you really gonna do it? No. So, first of all, you should just give us the spiel about the game. People who have not played this game, it has a subtitle, An Outrageous Storytelling Game for Adults. What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nothing to See Here is an adult party game. Oh, sure.
Okay.
So Nothing to See Here is exactly that, an adult party game where you are dealt a hand of cards and you have to explain your way out of the predicament you find yourself in. So everyone is in the same awkward situation, and it makes for incredible storytelling. And every single item is a little bit suggestive, which is why adult only.
And what do you guys have here? This is like the prototype version? Which prototype? Is this like the very first prototype?
So this was the polished project.
Nice.
I think Brandon printed this out.
Nice. Yeah, so wait, take us back in time. So this is when it was called the Cheaters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because originally the awkward situation was always that you were caught in flagrante delicto, as I say, in a compromising situation with somebody who then your spouse would think that you're cheating on with them, and you have to explain your way out of it, right?
Yeah.
But where did this game come from? How did it go? How did it go from here to here?
Yeah, that was a long story, but this was originally a class project in Eric's class, so design one, and then it was a narrative game, and then I think. Yeah, a poet came over to class, and then so we were gonna design a game based on inspired by a poem that they written, and this came out of that.
Yeah,
and
the
then,
poem was about like cheating essentially.
Right.
It was about doing stuff behind another person's back or whatever. But I think the impetus and the format sort of came from a different card game. I'm trying to remember.
Fun Employed.
Fun
I think
Employed.
was,
Yeah. Fun Employed. Yeah.
And then I think the final project we get to choose a game that we want to continue to work on, and then we chose this one because it was so hilarious, and every time we play with a group, and then everyone will like laugh their guts out. It was great.
The charm too is like literally the format. So all the cards, like this is designed by Dan. Everything is just so kind of nice, and you can sort of
hold those up for the camera. There's a nice picture of a cucumber. That's one of the suggestive cards.
Yeah, like you could look at these cards.
Well, we are getting the zoom in. All right, what have we got? Cucumber, broken condom, assless chaps, crystal ball.
Yeah. So it's not like bad to hold these up. Like it doesn't feel embarrassing in public. So this is a really great party game also for that reason, because you can talk about these really goofy items without feeling weird, because the way that it's drawn is like super sensitive. Like every aspect of this game was taken into consideration. So yeah, going from this to the final thing was quite a journey, but like the focus was on the story. Like what are we saying with the game? And initially we knew that there was something really intriguing about the concept, but there were a lot of players that felt pretty uncomfortable. So during the incubator, we spent time really exploring the breadth of storytelling that you could explore. And we found that there's quite a lot of different stories you can tell. So now with our game, you can also online play other story modes as well, which we're very excited about.
Tell us about what's your favorite new story mode that you came up with?
I think the grandparents one is the funniest. So the premise there is essentially like this is all going down in the grandparents' household, and they're coming back and discovering this. So it's kind of exploring ageism in a different way, and like kind of talking about that without talking about that, which is really nice. So yeah, just kind of fighting against the concept that like, I don't know, old people don't talk about sex or like are very puritanical or whatever. So we just explored a gamut of like what stories are not told and how can we put this forward in a very playful way that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable, but like, gets to the heart of the matter.
One of the things I think is so interesting about your game is that it does have a strong element of storytelling in a role-playing mode, where you sort of take on a role of like one person is playing like a grandparent, right? Yeah. Or are there two? Maybe there are two. Are there two grandparents in that mode? So you could.
It was the grandparent and the grandchild.
Oh, grandparent and the grandchild, right? Yeah. And then potentially other people that are involved, like if you have more players.
Yeah. So all of every single player gets dealt a hand of cards, and one of that is like your who are you? Like, what are you professionally?
Should I show those?
Yeah.
And those are different depending on the mode. But let's see the new cards.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
So interestingly,
So
like
cool.
some of your visual design has stayed pretty similar. You've got this sort of like vaguely condom-looking card back.
Yes, which is part of the humor, and we talk about this a lot too, like the table presence. Bringing this to conventions immediately attracted attention because of the bright, playful design, and that was something that we were very uncompromising about when we were talking to publishers. And luckily we had a publisher that also agreed and did not want to change it. So we're publishing this with Clarkson Potter, and they've been really, really awesome in working with us and our values for the game specifically. Yeah, so just really, really gorgeous. So you could draw something like one of the characters would be, let's just do a random hand of a character.
A random situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, Sandy Nicholas, an original. So you're playing as Sandy Nicholas, Santa Claus,
Yep.
and you are found booty popping against a yoga ball on the roof, and you
The
also
roof of the workshop, presumably.
yeah. So you have to first explain this original situation, and then also explain, why do you have nude selfies of Alex as well? So like the story.
That's the spouse. The name of the spouse.
Oh, the spouse
Yeah,
is
yeah.
always named Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that was another thing too. Like we were trying to make sure that the game is sensitive in the fact that like any gender, any orientation can play. So we really focused a lot to make sure that Alex and Sam seemed like, after many, many iterations, we went from like Brooke and like Red and Green originally to like Brooke and Taylor.
Taylor, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just so many
looking for
details.
neutral names.
Yes, gender neutral names that
Yeah.
we could use.
And for all the other characters as well, they're all gender neutral.
Yes.
Right, like Sandy Nicholas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it plays into as well the humor of like, oh, the pizza delivery person is like coming to your house to deliver pizza. So playing with those tropes in a new way.
Yeah, so like I was saying, I think what's interesting is you've got a pretty goal-oriented system. Everybody has their own agenda,
Yep.
right, which gets sort of resolved narratively by the end of the game.
Yes.
But it also, it's not like a very mechanically strict game. The way the game goes is more driven by how you're jointly constructing a story.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's more like a role-playing game. But then, when I look at your cards again, I feel like you've in some ways captured some of the magic of a game like Cards Against Humanity, but turned it in a very different direction, right? You're giving all of these things to riff off of, which sort of excite your imagination. But instead of being about like how terrible or evil of a thought can you have, the gist of all of your stuff is like about embarrassing situations that are hard to explain, which is just a very different headspace, but still has some of that kind of like ticklish energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from the first version to the last version, the part that we were struggling with was like, how do we finish this? Because we've had we had like very good energy in the middle of the game, and then eventually we realized, okay, well, the most simple, straightforward thing is to just do like awards. So like have like someone can choose at the very end stories that are perhaps the most athletic. Or the best self-care practice was like our favorite one from the newer edition.
Well, definitely
So
booty
funny.
popping against a yoga ball on the roof
Yeah.
is the best self-care practice for a hardworking Santa Claus.
Absolutely. Then we just like have like a scapegoat card now that passes around. So
Single black card.
yeah. So everyone can sort of experience that. So it's not like the pressure's on one person to constantly tell a good story. Like if you mess up the first round, then you get to, experience the story from everyone else. So the pressure's off of you at that point.
Wait, so tell me exactly how this works, because I love the idea of just one black card that just says the scapegoat on it.
So originally the scapegoat card is whoever. It's not like the person who told the worst story. It's like so the spouse would decide, okay, so you are the cheater and you take all the responsibility.
Oh, okay, so this is the person who's going to take the blame for the whole thing.
Yeah. So originally we only have the scapegoat, so there's only like
Right.
a loser and no winners. So
Right. Okay, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So the player's like, oh, this is, I want to feel like rewarded for the story I told. So that's why we came up with, all the awards.
So you might get the scapegoat card because you're the one who's taking the blame, whether people really believe it or not. You're the one who's going to get blamed. But then you could also get an award for the type of story that you told. Nice.
Yeah.
So you guys started this. What I think. First, we should give a shout out to Yushin, another team member who's in chat right now. Hi, Yushin.
Hey.
And I think Yushin was saying, you started this back in 2018. Was it in the fall and winter of 2018?
Oh wow.
The fall, it
Yes.
was the very first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the very first semester that you guys were in school here. And so that's almost 4 years ago. That's 3.5 years ago now.
It's a lifetime.
Yeah. And then the incubator, you must have been in the incubator starting in the 2020 to 2021 cycle, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Not the one that just ended, but
the
just
first remote cycle.
Last time. Right, that was the first remote. So you guys were remote and just and working. That was about a year of work going through the incubator. And then what happened after? So I'd love to ask you, especially because you're one of the few non-digital projects. I think maybe there's 3 or 4 non-digital projects that have come through the incubator. What was it helpful for your project in making design decisions and taking it to the next step? What was that like being in the incubator remotely, and how did it affect the course of the game?
Well, the first thing that I can think of is playtesting this remotely.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So we had to find different what's it called, similar to tabletop simulation.
Playing cards.
Yeah, playing cards. IO. So different
Nice.
platforms to playtest board games, and yeah. So when we were at the incubator, so there were a bunch of advisors, and we got help on how do you playtest this, or how do you reach out to different publishers or resources. So yeah, I think we were lucky. If we're interested in a publisher or someone, we can just throw in the chat does anyone know this person, and someone would probably be like, yeah, and then I would put you in touch. So I think that was a pretty awesome part of being in the incubator. Yeah.
I think we also at the time explored how can we do this digitally, and it didn't end up being something that we went with, but we actually did try to pitch to mobile publishers as well at the time.
Yeah.
New apps that were coming out that then get bought up by other companies, but it's okay.
A rapidly changing world.
Yeah. But for the most part, everyone was incredibly helpful in bringing this to the world. And I think for this game in particular, we cared a lot about the community and doing the game as much justice as possible with making it sex positive and stuff, and making sure the messaging is as positive as as far away from Cards Against Humanity as we can. And we reached out to a lot of organizations and just
coming up with the pitch deck was a big deal.
Just a lot of help went into this.
How many different publishers across the mobile publishers as well as the board game publishers would you say you talked to?
I think we officially talked to 4. We talked to, I think Buffalo Games was one of the early ones. And then we talked to 2 book publishers, so Clarkson Potter and Chronicle Books. And then we reached out to 1 app, House Party?
I think it was House Party, and then...
But House Party didn't respond back to us. So
I think they were going through a lot of changes. They were
getting bought up by EA.
Right,
So
that happens.
But we did have someone who could have talked. We were one step away from having a conversation, but stuff happens. So
And how did you end up deciding to go with Clarkson Potter? What was that like?
It was very straightforward.
I think Clarkson Potter. So Eric put us in touch with them actually before the incubator, and then so we brought our game to demo, and then they loved it, but then they were just we wish there were more stories or themes, because the cheating theme is kind of negative or questionable for their audience. It was
something that kept people from getting to the table, that once you're there, you're fine, and you understand that we're not actually saying you did anything at all. There's no blame being passed except the one person who has to take blame for the entire thing. But the the extreme humor, like that is really hard to pitch until you play through the thing. So that was, if you didn't have experience with it before, even just something like the publisher, like getting the right people at the table that like are open to an experience like this was probably challenging, because we got a lot of like scary feedback as
right,
well.
Like,
how could you?
If it hits like one wrong note,
yeah,
then it could really. Wait, so what's an example of scary feedback? If there's anything you feel like you can share.
Scary feedback was just the thought that anyone at the table was like so uncomfortable that they like felt the need to like put that in like the review that they wrote back for us. It wasn't, so with Clarkson Potter, at least if they said no, there was like some feedback we could work with. And then there was other feedback that was so off the mark of like what we wanted to
it's like
do
there's
with
no
the game.
strategy in this game. Or
Yeah,
something
there's
like
like
that,
no strategy, this, that, and the other thing. Oh, this could be, one of the comments was like, this could be any sort of item that you find and you make up a story with. And like, we knew that intrinsically that's not true. Like, I can't go into a room and find a piece of paper and a pen and say like, who murdered this person? Like, that's not how.
You guys are picking the items very purposefully.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So it was feedback like that, and just like some folks had a very bad experience because they were stifled by the whole concept of it. So that's not something you can control. You can just hope that there's acknowledgement going into it, like that is already set, but expectation is set when the publishers play, but you never know.
Right. So because not every game is for everyone or at every single time of whatever they're going through at the moment. Yeah, and I always find it fascinating that people would play a game like this and say, well, there's not much strategy in the game, right? Because one, it sort of reveals that they have just a certain orientation of like what they are expecting to find inside the box, which is certainly not true of every game. And then, and then they are so fixated on it and what they didn't find there that's the thing that gets stuck in their head, right? Yeah. But it sort of signals like, all right, thank you for saying that, because this game is not what you were looking for. And that's like a useful data point right there, right? You're like, almost like, check, that didn't work for the person who was looking for a strategy game. Mission accomplished.
And I think what I liked about working with Clarkson Potter is, I think partly because people on their team are not like typical gamers. Yeah. So and they're enjoying the game. It's like, oh, okay, so we're getting somewhere, and then this is like opening up to new, our audiences that they're usually not exposed to games like this. So, and my mom played this game and she loved it. So I was like, oh, okay, that's great.
So pass me the box. I think this is worth talking about, because. So you guys, first you came up with the new title, Nothing to See Here, right? So where did that come from?
That came from the incubator. That came from us having conversations with each other, saying like, we need to figure out, like, the title is not really explaining what the game is about. So this at least is getting closer to the idea of the mechanics of like, oh, you're walking into a room, you're maybe expecting to see something, but there's nothing here. Don't worry about it. Like, ignore it. So.
Right, nothing to see here, which I guess could be for all sorts of disastrous situations where you're like, don't move along, don't rubberneck. Right, so I think it does kind of capture what you're going for, but it doesn't work there are other things supporting it, right? So you guys have this tagline up here that says, hilarity will ensue. That kind of cues like, this is a comedy game. Right, and then when did you choose this color scheme? Because this like bold like pink box. Again, I think you guys were saying before you want to be as far away from Cards Against Humanity as possible. It almost feels like this is like the super pink box with white letters is sort of a starkly different, but somehow in the same neighborhood as that like black box with white letters, Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, totally. It was a very open conversation actually with the designers. So they actually gave us I was looking through the documents the other day and I realized like they did a lot of work with us. Like it was so much hand in hand, because they sent us a deck of competitor like games that like we could sort of style it in the direction of, and then we came back and said like, oh, like it's got to be bold, so we like went in the pink direction. So just every single step was a conversation, which made that, I think, a really great experience working with them, because they were just so careful and appreciated that we were also very careful and thorough and thoughtful. So.
Nice.
And I think we have eventually picked the pink because it's like very positive and it's like celebrating.
Yeah.
This like it's all about like sex positivity and then like all different kinds of kinks and sexuality. So I think this is it does a pretty good job of like representing like what we want to present in this game. So
yeah.
Right. Like I don't know what Clark's and Potter's publishing strategy is, but this seems like a natural for any kind of like sex toy store. Like, and this box would go really well next to a bookshelf full of, I don't know, like Pat Califia books or other things or sex toys. And it's definitely a huge step above. I mean, I have a history of complaining about bad sex games. So, and there usually are some, right? It's just like Sex Dice or something like that, where this is like a big step up. And then I think this tagline works really well too, and nicely set out here. It just says an outrageous storytelling game for adults. So like every word of that is kind of important, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that tagline.
Yeah.
How many versions?
How many versions of the tagline did you go through?
At least 10. Right?
So many. And that started during the incubator and then continued with Clark's and Potter because they had also their own marketing team that like had say in the stuff that we were putting on the box and even back of box copy, like all of those considerations, but.
Nice. And so you're getting across, I think, storytelling game.
Yes.
For people who, whether you know that term or not, it sort of signals like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing here, and maybe diffuses a little bit of the like, is it a strategy game where I'm going to win kind of energy, and then of course for adults.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, and I'm just going to read the back of the box because I thought this was done pretty well too. It starts off with like a in-res media like scene setting. You've been discovered taped to the ceiling, half naked, holding an eggplant and massage oil. And there's actually examples of those cards are right here, like eggplant, half naked, and taped to the ceiling. What were you doing? And sort of a big black. That's because that's the central question, right? That the main player is going to have to figure out. Each player is dealt an identity, location, and some naughty items. Use them to develop a compelling narrative and prove your innocence. Come up with unexpectedly convincing explanations. I want to ask you about that phrase. And receive the most awards to win the game. If your story flops, you'll be the scapegoat. So unexpectedly convincing explanations is the sort of most distinctive phrase there. What does that mean in the context of Nothing to See Here?
Do you want to?
I don't know.
Well, so like, it's really easy to actually explain yourself out of it, I think. Like, we've made it so that there are some items that are there's balance. So we've added some items that are normal but still like too close, like a cucumber, right? Like you can say, yeah, I have this because I'm gonna make a salad, and like that's super convincing. But then there's other stuff that you absolutely cannot explain yourself out of. So like in the game, the mounting tension is that you're dealt more items. So that perfect story that you've conceived, now you have to make room for the other objects or the other, explanations that are happening. And some people are just really, really good at it. But you do get better as you like play. So like the first time around, you're like trying to figure out your way like through this weird world that we've put you in. And then the second round, you're like, oh, I see what's happening. Okay. And then you get excited to like pull different cards and see like, oh, how can I convince someone that a like love egg is like a normal thing to have on you like on a day-to-day. And the professions help with that a lot. So
definitely. Yeah, I think there was like a bartender who used love eggs to stir their drink or something.
You like vibrate it up and to make it frothy.
You make it shaky. Like these are normal. So that's also the thing, right? Like we're trying to like normalize these items. Yeah. So like all of these things that people don't normally talk about, we wanted to put it out in the public, that like just start to recontextualize what these things are, to start a conversation and like normalize it. So
right, and then it doesn't necessarily have to get hyper explicit. In fact, all of the explanations are sort of trying to move away from the extremely explicit stuff, which might make some people even more uncomfortable, right? So the unexpectedly convincing, I think, is fascinating because it is about these combinatorial possibilities. Yeah. And so the more combinations you have to include, the more unexpected it is. But there is a little bit of skill that you, like you said, you acquire from playing. And even you could consider it a type of strategy, right? To sort of like figure out how to fit these things together. Oh, bring your job in, right? And then you get this combo which creates that aha moment of the game that's appreciated by the other players, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of then ties into the whole voting like award system with the purple cards. They're like, that was completely awesome what you did. And I think that's the sort of the secret sauce for so many storytelling games, to create that memorable experience. So we are almost out of time. We're in the last minute, but tell us where can people get this game? When is it going to be available? What's the plan?
So it's gonna be up, I think, in retail stores like Target and Barnes and Nobles, but also online on Amazon. I believe we have the link up there.
Yeah, there you go.
Woo!
Yeah, is it pre-order right now or available?
Yeah, it's in
Pre-order, and then it
right
goes
now.
live on May 10th.
May 10th.
May 10th, so just a week from today. So if you pre-order it now, you'll get that shipped in that first batch, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's awesome that you guys are in bookstores. I'm all talking about like, this would be great in sex toy stores, where it's like a tiny fraction of like Target.
Funny that you mentioned that, because that is what we actually brought to the table.
Yeah.
Like when we went to Clarkson Potter, we were like, hey, no, like we actually really want to work with these select stores.
Yeah, we send them a list.
Yeah, we did. We did research, and we're like, we should really be here, because we don't want to, like, we think we have something interesting to say instead of sex toys. So,
Yes. Nice. Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on, and yeah, we love to see you. Thanks for coming back. It's been a while since we had Rachel here.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of you guys out there reading in chat, come up with an excuse to like show up in person once the Game Center Live resumes in the fall. We'd be happy to have you on as well. All right, let's hear it for Nothing to See Here.
Woo!
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mary, Rachel, and Naomi. That was a wonderful showcase. It's great to see this game physically present. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming onto the stream. All right. Stay tuned. Next up, we have the Discourse, once again with Naomi Clark. Give it up for Naomi for pulling a double shift today, and we'll be welcoming Jack Schlesinger onto the stream shortly. Bear with us while we get set up. Thank you so much for your patience. Without further ado, welcome to the stream, Jack Schlesinger with Naomi Clark for the Discourse.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us remotely, Jack. This is cool. I feel like this is like a real cable news show now, right? I can just like look.
Right.
Wait, am I looking the right way? And you're the talking head who's kind of appeared. So yeah, and I'm wearing a mask and you're wearing not wearing a mask. It's like super hyper real. So thank you for coming, appearing remotely as our guests this week. We got Jack Schlesinger, alumni and adjunct professor. How's it going? I hear you have something exciting that just recently happened that maybe we should mention.
Yeah, that's right. My collaborator, Zach Gage, and I just put out a game called Knotwords, which is a kind of a crossword without clues kind of a game. It's actually been thrilling for me to know that I'm going to be on the Discourse, because I have not opened Twitter in 2 weeks while I was
good news,
getting the builds out and getting everything ready. So I gave me a reason to go back and see what I missed.
Yeah, excellent. And then now you realize you just don't ever need to open Twitter again. It's like now maybe permanently fallen out of favor.
2 weeks well, yeah. I mean, also with some new hostile takeovers that are happening, maybe I won't open Twitter ever again.
Yeah, maybe. I think I could live with just getting a summary every 2 weeks, then I would definitely not go back. But hey, let's jump into this week's Discourse links. We're starting off with something hilariously bad. We're going to make a little fun of the LAPD, which I grew up with, understanding that the LAPD was the worst, most brutal, terrible police force in the world. Now, ever since I moved to New York, I'm like, maybe the NYPD is worse. They're certainly larger and more funded, but the LAPD does have some special qualities, like their cops drive around playing Pokemon Go. So this was a story a while back, but what's new in this article is that there's a whole transcript of what they're talking about, while they're ignoring a robbery in progress. They're just like, hey, we have to get that Snorlax.
Not even ignoring a robbery in progress, actively hiding and running away from a robbery in progress.
Right, they're like, okay, we got to back up out of the alley, because otherwise we'll see the robbery in progress. So we have to go back that way in order to drive over to where we need to get the Snorlax. I don't know. Right. Yeah, what's your impression of these guys as players?
Well, I mean, honestly, I feel like there's been a lot of talk about defunding the police, but honestly, if we could put more training into how to correctly catch Pokemon on the go, that's where our tax dollars really need to be going, because they are terrible Pokemon Go players. Yeah,
so that's a double indictment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I say defund or fund Pokemon Go training.
Yeah, and the scandal here is that they were ignoring this robbery that had been reported. But honestly, right. if they were ignoring stupid broken windows police. Yeah. Wait, sorry, say that again.
Yeah, they were ignoring it for a Togetic. They were
not for a good reason. But I would be fine with them doing that if they were playing Pokemon Go instead of doing pointless, brutal, broken windows policing of a neighborhood. Yeah, by all means, play Pokemon Go, play other multiplayer games with kids in the neighborhood. Do that instead of being brutal enforcers, a sort of legalized mob trying to assert their authority over everybody. So we do have to segue from this to a much, much darker Pokemon/police overlap story. This just happened, brought to our attention by longtime contributor Alexander King in Florida. This is unfortunately one of those Florida man. Florida man is dead, and several other people are injured because at Target, Target has had problems with Pokemon card sales, right? There was an incident a while ago where the local police in this area sort of encouraged Target to call the cops on anybody that was waiting in the parking lot to buy new Pokemon card releases. And now this time around,
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and this time around, it's at the end of this story on the screen right now. This time around, they called the cops because, some guys showed up and were like robbing Pokemon cards and wearing masks. And although these people were unarmed, just coming to rip off some Pokemon cards, they were, they end up getting shot by the police, and one of them is dead. So again, yeah.
I mean, if anything, this does seem like Pokemon hoarding on the part of the cops. But like, to be more serious, I think, obviously, if you can have more than a dozen units responding to two people, and you can't deal with unarmed shoplifters, maybe you've got bigger issues.
Yeah, this is really not a story about games at all. It's about a deadly incompetence and excessive use of force and authoritarianism. So from that,
I feel like looking over if anything, that's the theme of today's discourse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Facebook and NFTs and Meta.
Yeah, people care a lot about games, and sometimes enough to go rob their local Target. Now that's probably not the right thing to do, but they shouldn't end up dead for it.
It shouldn't be a death sentence, certainly.
Yeah, let's move from this dark topic to a very different kind of dark topic. This man has been a popular face of Nintendo for a long time. Reggie Fils-Aime, right? He's I don't know, like, I feel like for Nintendo fans, he's long been considered like a good guy at Nintendo. But now he's like, yeah, you know what? I've also bought into blockchain. Yeah, we should definitely do blockchain gaming. I don't know. Like, on one hand, I could chalk this up to, yet another person had a really expensive lunch or dinner with some blockchain investor and was convinced to be like, yes, blockchain. What do you think is going on here? Is it just part of the hype train rolling?
I mean, I think if you ask someone, 100 times, like, are you interested in exploring this? They're gonna, from a business perspective, they're gonna have to say, oh yeah, we'll look into it if it makes sense, right? This doesn't, this article, as I read it, I was like, this doesn't really seem as though like he's about to call up Bowser at Nintendo USA and be like, all right, let's make the business plan to make this happen. I don't think, is Reggie Fils-Aime still on the board of Nintendo? But in any case, I think this seems more like, after getting asked for the 20th time, he said, if it's good for the player, there could be an opportunity here.
Right. Yeah, it's like you would have to really hold a hard line. You'd have to be a hard liner to just be like, every single time somebody asks you this, to be like, no, we have no plans to do that. Now, some people would admire you for doing that, right? But other people are going to end up thinking that you're unreasonable.
Moral thing to do would be
to
say that.
Now, I mean, that's my take. I mean, I also get asked a lot. As the chair of the Game Center, we get tons of emails and like people calling me up. I have a phone call with someone later today who's like, I want to talk to you about blockchain gaming, which I didn't know that was the subject of the call until later. But every single time I'm like, no. But I have something that I can fall back on, which is that I can always be like, what advice would I actually give students? And the advice I would give students is stay far away from this stuff, because maybe you'll be able to make a buck for a while, but probably there's going to be something really sketchy going on, and it's probably not going to help you make any other kind of game. I don't know, like if I gave you that advice, well, you're doing fine, Jack. You're putting out great mobile games with Zach. But what are your thoughts?
Mobile and on Steam.
And on Steam
currently.
too.
But I do think that basically every time someone has come to me with something blockchain related, the thing that they usually don't know is that I was studying computational complexity back in the old days, 2007, 2008, when Bitcoin and like originally became a thing. Like when that paper was being written. So I've got like 15 years of looking down at this and being like, well, this is stupid. And basically, whenever I talk to anyone about this, usually what I say is, can you tell me why you would want to do what you are suggesting on the blockchain? And it is something that could only be done in the blockchain.
Yeah.
And I would say 99% of the time, they do not have a adequate response to that question.
Interesting. So the last time we had a big deep dive into this, Alexander King was on the show, and he said pretty much exactly the same thing. It's like, is this something that could this only be done with blockchain? Because it's expensive, complicated, big barriers to entry, scams galore if you're going to go in this direction for a game, right?
Yeah, it is like has been really innovative in the scam space, like the fraud space. Has really
fraud
been
pioneers.
Yeah, they've really disrupted the fraud space, I would say, in ways that are exciting and new. But yeah, there's essentially what Reggie Fils-Aimé's like point in his response to this, which could have been drafted by one of these like blockchain groups, was that, well, if I work on something for a while playing a game, I would want to be able to monetize that eventually.
Right, and that's
so the people that are standing in the way of that is Nintendo. Like, you could, there's nothing
is stopping them from doing that. Yeah,
yeah,
they would just need a secondary marketplace. They would, and you know who did this a while ago? Valve. Valve did this ages ago.
Yeah, people have been trying this for 30 years,
right?
To have secondary marketplaces related to this, and it always turns into a cesspool of scams, bad like illegal investments, or people laundering money through it. Like, there is no, this has existed. The blockchain doesn't give us this facility. Right. It already exists using databases.
But now companies like Nintendo can just outsource the scams and be like, that's not on our secondary marketplace. It's out there on the blockchain. It's somebody else's problem. So
yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's the sea change. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. We should keep on going. Now we're in the sort of back half of the... So let's talk about the metaverse, kind of tied into all of this. So there, a bunch of news came out. I guess there was a Facebook, now known as Meta, earnings report and investor meeting. And it turned out they spent $3 billion in 3 months. That's almost like $1 billion per month. They have like 17,000 people working in Reality Labs, which is a sort of division working on the metaverse, right? So this is just one company pouring a mind-boggling amount of money trying to figure out whether it's working, or like how to have something that's going to stick, and have yet to really show anything that gets much more than some people being like, well, that doesn't seem like anything interesting so far, and then a camp of true believers who are like, I believe so much in Snow Crash and or Ready Player One that like I'm just willing to go on this ride. Where are you at on the investment here?
It's funny, like, I actually have potentially a less hardline stance on this, which is that, like, there is going to be a technological innovation in the next decade or two that is, I believe, going to make something like the metaverse make sense. But we don't necessarily know now what that technological innovation is going to be.
Right, because it's probably not VR headsets, right? Part of the
if it was VR headsets 40 years ago, it would have been VR headsets.
Right. But this isn't, so I remember back when Facebook bought Oculus, which seems like ancient history now, but back then they were saying things like, we think this is the next big hardware play. They wanted to be Apple, right? They wanted to come up with the next iPhone. And they're saying the next iPhone is going to be a VR headset. People are going to use it in the same way, going to carry it around with them, just slap it on their face and be like, yeah, I'm in the metaverse now. Clearly that's not happening. And I think what you're positing is, well, something might occur to actually make this more viable.
This is something I call the white guy programmer problem, which is that, like, it's also related to all the blockchain stuff, where it is like, if you're a programmer and people haven't said no to you enough, you you look at any hard problem and you're like, oh, well, I can solve this the same way I solve everything using programming, which is essentially what like all the schemes on blockchain are. People being like, well, what if public health information, I treated it like the way I solve problems in programming, as though like every difficult problem,
everything looks like a nail.
Be mapped. Yeah, everything could be mapped to that.
Right, because you've got this hammer, this big hammer that you're used to using. And you're like, oh, that's a nail, that's a nail, that's a nail. I just have to get somebody to give me money for hitting this nail. Yeah.
Yeah, I need someone the hammer lobby to just give me a bunch of hammers.
Yes,
I think like the thing about the iPhone that sounds weird to say is that it's sexy. It's like a cool thing to have in your hand. You can make it look good, right? You can't make a VR headset look good, and people have tried and failed so many different ways and so many different times. And like at the end of the day, whatever the next big thing is going to be, it's going to be attached to culture and to humans. And so I think like it's possible we'll have some kind of wearable screen that looks good and is not like fully disruptive of the current culture we have. That will become this thing, but again, we're not close to anything like that.
Yeah, and I think there's really interesting design things that have yet to be solved too, like the whole question of attention, right? And people, they're doing all sorts of stuff with pass-through, so you can see the world that you're actually in and VR and shift back and forth. But there's only so much, like, where do people actually want their attention to be going? Is it just an unanswered question that is kind of looming around all of these advertisements? Let's keep going. So this, the fact that they're spending so much money is accompanied by the fact that they've literally, Mark Zuckerberg the other day literally went out and said, you know what, we're not going to make any money from this for like 7 to 10 years, which I think is just fascinating. So on one hand, some people are pissed off about this, right? And saying, oh, they're just pouring money down into a toilet. Like, how could investors be willing to put up with this? So if we're like, okay, who cares about investors? This is sort of interesting to me. Like, if this was something I were more interested in than the metaverse, which is an idea that's just been around for decades, that kind of like VR in general for me has never really taken off, then I would be like, oh, this is a fascinating business strategy, just to be like, you know what? We're going to spend $1 billion a month for 10 years and just to see what happens. I'm like, okay, if you are as rich as Sin, like Mark Zuckerberg, and well, one, obviously you should be redistributing that wealth in some way. But then two, if you are going to spend it on R&D to try and make something really new, I can't totally fault this approach of just being like, let's just do it and not expecting anything back for a while. Maybe this is an old school Steve Jobs Silicon Valley thing that I shouldn't be appreciating. But is this throwing money? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, the world is burning and people don't have housing or food.
Yep.
And we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and we're throwing away an amount of money that could solve that annually.
Absolutely. I think
that Meta can be the first person in whatever this space is going to be. I mean, I can't know the future. Like, maybe it's going to take 7 years of this amount of money to develop whatever this technology is going to be, but maybe we don't need this technology a decade earlier than it would otherwise be in place, and human lives are more valuable.
Yeah, it's still boggling my mind. How is this going to help anyone? How is it even going to produce a compelling entertainment experience, given that
Yeah, I think like you just are, if you have so much money and you aren't being taxed, like, you've got to tax yourself, I guess.
Yeah, it's just I guess really what it comes down to is just a sort of a fantasy spend, just being like, he picked this one thing to pour his money into.
Yeah, if I rubbed a lamp and I got $1 billion a month, but I had to spend it every month, I don't know what I would do with it. So
yeah, it would probably it would give you serious mental health problems to have that amount of money, but it's not fair, right? Like that's why you shouldn't have that amount of money. It should be distributed. Okay.
Just for my own, for me, not for like the value of distributing.
Right. No,
just
of course.
For my mental health. Yeah, it would be.
It shouldn't be on you to spend that amount of money, right? That's the thing.
Right.
Okay, so let's shift away from all this complaining. I want to talk
Communist
about
politics with Naomi and Jack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some slightly more interesting takes on this. Let's go to that the New Yorker piece. This is an old one. Now, I wanted to wrap up this season of Game Center Live by saying, if you're going to read one little piece about all of this stuff, this is an interesting one, this New Yorker piece. It's actually from back in January by this writer Anna Wiener. The screen's kind of small for me. And so, interestingly, so she's not really coming from the tech world or from games, but she talks a lot about games. In fact, the first thing she talks about is Farmville in this piece. She's like, okay, I was on vacation. I rented somebody's house, and it was a really nice place. This guy had retired. What does he spend all of his time doing? Playing Farmville. And her mind was boggled. Right now, to us, we might not be surprised by that. Right? He's pouring his time into playing a game. He enjoys his virtual crops. It's got like a addictive game loop where hopefully he wasn't spending too much money. But she's sort of tying this in and saying, all right, this story that started with Farmville, which of course is a big part of the rise of Facebook in the first place, all of the revenue created by Facebook games in the sort of back in the 2000s, then eventually it is kind of a through line that this piece draws from here to like Axie Infinity. Farmville was mysterious to people because they're doing something that looks like work, but this retired guy is obsessed with it. It's a sort of simulated work, but he's claiming to do it for fun. And then Axie Infinity, we've gotten to the inverse of that, where it's now they're saying, oh, like we're doing this fun thing, playing a game, but really the great thing about it is that it's our job and that we get we get minimum wage for doing it. And possibly more if we manage to scam people into, being part of our little section of the pyramid. So yeah, I don't know. What did you think of this piece? I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Jack.
I mean, I really enjoyed this piece. I think it was it was bringing me back to when Farmville was around originally, and I was like, this is never going to catch on. I remember having that thought. And then it caught on, and I remember feeling like I was better than those people who play Farmville, and cut to me alone in the dark playing Cookie Clicker and optimizing it in my head, trying to get the perfect click in Cookie Clicker. I think there is something. There's, if anything, something about what minimum wage genuinely means, I think, that comes out of this for me, which is that if we are okay with saying we're going to create a digital world like Axie Infinity, where people are going to treat this like their job, and they're not necessarily producing value in the real world, or even value to other players in Axie Infinity. They're just doing this labor. At a certain point, you have to ask, how much are general jobs just like this? How much is it just you're giving in to the social construct that you're going to go to some place for 8 hours a day? And
I guess the classic text on that at this point is David Graeber's bullshit jobs, right? Right. That so many jobs are not actually producing anything. They're not necessary. They're just sort of more friction in the system. And it kind of this is one explanation for the rise of the play to earn game. That really it's a type of means testing in order to get a welfare payment. Right? You have to do something in order to earn your unemployment check or your welfare check. How about you just play this game for no reason? That's kind of minimally balanced.
Not fun. Yeah. It's a game in name only. I mean, this also happened before the $36 million hack of Axie Infinity. That was a couple weeks ago. Now, very plausibly, there is no more money there.
Yeah, it might have just all bottomed out. It's fascinating. But the I don't know. The upshot of it is, maybe this is the direction things are going in, that you just but why, if we were going to do this, if we actually consciously did this as a society, instead of having weird capitalist experiments, at least people would be protein folding games. They would do right?
Right. Yeah.
Or they would be
least
like
you could-
searching for buried ruins in the desert, which is, there's another game that does that. It would be one of these
Yeah.
like actual citizen science games that did something.
Yeah,
okay.
we could actually. Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to, the last link what I want to recommend to all of you, and I think we'll have this be the last link of the discourse for this school year, comes from Eric Zimmerman, and it's a New York Times interview between Ezra Klein with this philosopher, Sita Nguyen, and the Nguyen has kind of become one of the favorite philosophers of the Game Center lately, in part because because Nguyen is a big fan of Bernard Suits. He's a philosopher who kind of discovered philosophy of games. Everybody who's taken a game studies class here probably remembers Bernard Suits. He's the one who pointed out, like, well, if you play golf, it would be easier to just pick up the ball and put it in the hole, right? But you do this weird thing instead where you hit it with a club from far away. But Nguyen is really kind of extending this and talking about, well, why do we play games? What is the point? And what is the danger of games? And I think he has some really interesting thoughts in this interview about how games present a cleaner version of the world where it's just very simple and you get like an output and you seem to understand how things work. And that's part of this whole picture, I think, too, of what's going on with the metaverse, with pay to earn games, that we're like, oh, what if it was, it's a different dark side of gamification, right? Not just behavior modification, but thinking that you understand how anything complicated works because you can boil it down. Last thoughts from you, Jack.
Well, I mean, I do think that that's pretty in line with my white guy programmer philosophy. Yep. But I think if anything, I would just recommend you can read the first chapter of their new book by going to their website, and it's a really good read. And yep. It's the first, like, I'm embarrassed to say, the first game studies-y thing that I've read since Game Studies 1 in my first year of the MFA, but I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, thank you. So there's your summer reading assignment from the Discourse. Read up on Nguyen. We'll talk more about this stuff in the fall when we return. And I don't know, maybe we'll have an unexpected summer special at some point if Gwynna and Logan feel like it. I want to give a big end of the semester Game Center Live thanks to the crew behind the scenes. Logan, Claire, whose melodious voice always brings you in and out of these shows. Gwynna Forgum Thrift, always like running things from behind the scenes as well. And our amazing captioning team. Who's on captions right now, Logan? Danny M. Denny? Jenny. Oh, Jenny, thank you so much. Sorry, I've got headphones on and can't hear properly. But thanks to everybody in chat for being here. Big applause all around, and I'll turn it over to Logan to ring it out. And thanks for being with us, Jack.
Of course, anytime.
All right. Sorry, 1 second. I have a lot of buttons to push here. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Naomi and Jack. That was the Discourse, and this has been Game Center Live, but we have one last little bit we'd like to share with you. Please welcome to the stream Raymond Lothian, who is going to chat with us very quickly about our end-of-year showcase.
You don't need that.
I don't? Okay, cool. Am I good? All right. Hello, camera. Right, hey, just a reminder, the week of May 16th is the end-of-year NYU Game Center Showcase. There's going to be 2 dates people are going to want to keep in mind. So we have the Twitch show, which is going to be streaming live on this channel Monday the 16th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then we also have the in-person showcase, which is going to be happening Friday the 20th from 7 to 10 p.m. The Twitch show, no RSVP needed. Just tune into the channel and then see some games happening. For the in-person show, we are requiring that all guests must reserve RSVP up to 24 hours in advance. You need to show proof of vaccination at the door, which includes 2 shots and your booster, plus a photo ID. And there will be a link in the chat so that you can RSVP, and masks will be required for the duration of the show. But yes, come see it. There's going to be a lot of stuff, a lot of great projects worked on throughout both MFAs, BFAs, capstones, all game design classes. So yes, that is it. That's my segment. I'm out.
That was perfect. Thank you so much for that, Raymond. And with that, that has been Game Center Live. And as we've all mentioned before, this is the semester finale for the spring 2022 semester. Naomi already did my job for me in thanking everyone that's been involved with these streams, but I just want to take another moment to thank everybody. Thanks to our faculty hosts, Charles Pratt, Eric Zimmerman, and of course, Naomi Clark, for putting in a tremendous amount of work into our bi-monthly Discourse segments, and an extra thanks to all the guests she's invited over the course of this semester. Once again, a huge thank you to all the behind-the-scenes folks. Winnie Song for making all the graphics for these streams. Thank you so much for that. We've been using these graphics forever. They're incredible. Once again, Jenny M for the live captioning every single week of Game Center Live. And certainly, last but not least, our producer, Gwenna Forgham Thrift. Please give it up in chat for Gwenna. This show takes a tremendous amount of effort, and on top of her day-to-day responsibilities at the Game Center, she took the time out this semester to put together all of the announcements, wrangle all the guests each week, post links in chat, come up with segment ideas for the show, and much more. This show would absolutely not be possible without Gwenna's efforts. Finally, thanks to the NYU Game Center community at large for coming together this semester and helping to put on an incredibly fun show every single week. I have been your behind-the-scenes operator, Logan Clare. That's all for now. Have a wonderful summer, and we'll see you next time.